I was 3 feet off the ground in my bucket truck, repairing a power line on Oakmont Drive when I first saw her marching toward me like she owned the entire neighborhood. Which, in a way, she thought she did. The storm that had blown through Westfield, Connecticut, 2 nights ago had knocked out power to about 3,000 homes, and I had been working 16-hour shifts alongside my crew to get everyone back online. My name is Trevor Nordstrom, and I have been a licensed electrical contractor for 12 years. The power company contracts me for all their storm repairs in this region. It is good money, essential work, and I take pride in keeping communities lit up and functioning. I was focused on splicing a damaged wire when I heard the voice. Sharp, demanding, cutting through the sound of my generator. "Excuse me, excuse me," I looked down. A woman in her late 40s stood below, hands on her hips, wearing a crisp white polo shirt with some kind of logo embroidered on it. Her blonde hair was pulled back so tight it looked painful, and she wore sunglasses that probably cost more than my electric bill. "Can I help you?" I called down, not stopping my work. The neighborhood needed power, and I was not about to delay that for a conversation. "You absolutely can help me by removing this eyesore from our community immediately." I paused, securing the wire connection before lowering the bucket. "Excuse me. This truck," she gestured at my vehicle like it was a garbage heap, "is in direct violation of our HOA covenants. Commercial vehicles are not permitted to be parked on community streets for more than 2 hours, and you have been here for," she checked her watch, 3 hours and 47 minutes. "Madam, I am with the power company. I am restoring electricity to your neighbors. I do not care if you are with the president himself. The rules are the rules. I am Patricia Whitmore, president of the Oakmont Hills Homeowners Association, and I am ordering you to remove this vehicle immediately or face a citation." I took a breath. I had dealt with difficult people before, but this was a new level of absurd. "Look, Patricia, I understand you have rules, but this is emergency utility work. I am legally permitted to be here under state statutes regarding essential services. Our HOA covenants supersede state law on our private streets. That is not how any of this works." Her face flushed red. "Do not condescend to me, young man. I will have this vehicle towed if you do not comply within the hour. You are not towing my truck while I am working on an active power line. That is dangerous and illegal. We will see about that." She pulled out her phone and started typing furiously. I went back up in the bucket. I had work to do, and I honestly thought that would be the end of it. Just another angry resident who did not understand how utility work functioned. I had encountered hundreds of them over the years. They would complain, make threats, then ultimately realize they had no authority over emergency services. I was wrong. 2 hours later, I had finished the repair on Oakmont Drive and moved to Sycamore Lane, about 4 blocks away. Another downed line, another critical repair. I was halfway through the job when a massive tow truck rolled up, yellow lights flashing. The driver, a heavy-set guy in his 50s, climbed out and approached me. "You Trevor Nordstrom?" "Yeah, that is me." "Sorry, man, I got orders to tow this bucket truck. HOA called it in as an abandoned commercial vehicle." "Abandoned? I am literally standing right here working in it." He shrugged. "Look, I am just doing what I was hired to do. The HOA paid us $500 to remove this truck from their community. They said they have the authority." "They absolutely do not have the authority. This is utility work. Call your boss, call anyone, but you are not touching this truck." The tow driver looked uncomfortable. The lady who called was real insistent, said she had every legal right. "She is wrong, and if you tow this truck while I am performing emergency utility work, You are going to be liable for a whole mess of legal problems." He hesitated, then pulled out his phone. "Let me call the office." While he was on the phone, my cell rang. It was dispatch. "Trevor, we have got a problem," said Maria, our operations coordinator. "Some HOA president is calling the power company claiming you are violating community rules and demanding your removal from the area." "Yeah, I met her. Patricia something. She is threatening to tow my truck." "Can she do that?" "No, she cannot. We are performing emergency utility work under state authority, but she does not seem to care about that. The company is backing you 100%. Do what you need to do to complete the repairs. I am sending you an email with the relevant statutes and our legal authorization. Forward that to anyone who gives you trouble." "Thanks, Maria." The tow driver hung up and walked back to me. "My boss says we should not touch it if you are actively working. But the HOA lady is threatening to sue us if we do not tow it." "Your boss is right. Tell the HOA to pound sand." He nodded, climbed back in his tow truck and left. I thought that would be the end of it. An hour later, as I was wrapping up the Sycamore Lane repair, 3 police cars rolled up. Not 1, 3. A young officer approached me, hand resting casually on his belt. "Sir, we received a call about an illegally parked commercial vehicle blocking traffic and refusing to leave private property." "Officer, I am Trevor Nordstrom with Nordstrom Electrical Contractors. I am under contract with Connecticut Power and Light to perform emergency storm repairs. This is legal utility work. Do you have documentation?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the email from Maria, along with my contractor license, my utility authorization, and the state statutes governing emergency electrical work. He reviewed everything carefully. "This all looks in order." It is. The HOA president does not seem to understand that her covenants do not override state law. "Is this Patricia Whitmore?" "That is her," the officer sighed. "Yeah, she calls us about twice a week. Someone parking in the wrong spot, someone's fence is 2 inches too tall, someone's dog barked after 9 p.m. We are familiar with her." "So you understand I am legally allowed to be here?" "Absolutely. Complete your work. If she harasses you again, give us a call." The 3 police cars left. I finished the repair and moved to the next location. Over the next 2 days, I continued working in the Oakmont Hills community, restoring power line by line, house by house. Patricia Whitmore continued calling the police, calling the tow companies, and even showing up in person to yell at me from the ground while I worked 40 feet in the air. On the 3rd day, things escalated. I parked my bucket truck on Chestnut Court at 7 in the morning. I had a full day of work ahead, with at least 6 more downed lines to repair in this community alone. I climbed out, started my generator, and was doing my pre-work safety check when a flatbed tow truck rolled up. Not just any tow truck. A massive heavy-duty flatbed with a hydraulic lift system, the kind used for moving construction equipment. Before I could react, 3 men jumped out and started securing chains to my truck. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" "HOA paid us $2,000 to remove this vehicle from the property immediately, with or without the owner's consent," one of them said. "You cannot do that. This is legal utility work. I am calling the police." The HOA lady said she has a court order. She does not have a court order. There is no judge in this state who would grant that. But they kept working, fast and efficient. These guys knew what they were doing, and they had clearly been paid well to ignore any objections. I called 911. "This is an emergency. Someone is stealing my commercial vehicle while I am performing emergency utility work for the power company." The dispatcher took my information and said officers were on the way, but the tow crew worked fast. Within 10 minutes, they had my bucket truck secured and were lifting it onto the flatbed. "Where are you taking it?" "HOA impound lot on Miller Road." "This is theft. I am pressing charges." "Take it up with the lady who hired us, man. We are just contractors." They drove off with my truck. My 40-foot bucket truck with all my tools, all my equipment, everything I needed to do my job. I called Maria at dispatch. They just towed my truck. "What? Who?" "The HOA. They hired a heavy-duty tow company and seized my bucket truck, took it to some impound lot on Miller Road." "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. I have been out here for 3 days restoring power to this community, and the HOA president just had my truck stolen because she thinks commercial vehicles are unsightly." "Stay where you are. I am calling the legal team and the police." This is going to be a problem for them. 2 police cars arrived 15 minutes later. This time it was a sergeant, an older guy with gray hair and a no-nonsense expression. "You are the electrical contractor?" "Yes, sir. Trevor Nordstrom." "Someone just towed my bucket truck while I was performing emergency utility work." "The HOA?" "Yes, Patricia Whitmore." He rubbed his face. "Unbelievable. Do you know where they took it?" "Miller Road, some impound lot." "Okay, come with me." I rode in the sergeant's patrol car to Miller Road. It was a private impound lot, surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. My bucket truck sat in the middle of the lot, along with about a dozen other vehicles. The sergeant and I walked into the office, where a guy in his 30s sat behind a desk playing on his phone. "I need you to release that bucket truck immediately," the sergeant said. The guy looked up. "Cannot do that. HOA paid us to impound it, and they have the release authorization. That truck was seized illegally while the owner was performing emergency utility work. Release it now, or I will arrest you for receiving stolen property." The guy's eyes went wide. "Whoa, hold on. The HOA lady said she had legal authority to have it towed. She showed us paperwork." "What paperwork?" He rummaged through a file and pulled out a document. It was a printed copy of the HOA covenants, with a highlighted section about commercial vehicles. "This is not a court order," the sergeant said. "This is a community guideline, and it does not override state law. You impounded a vehicle that was actively being used for emergency services. That is illegal." "I did not know, man. She said she was the HOA president and had every right. Ignorance is not an excuse. Release the truck. Now." The guy scrambled to grab the keys and led us out to my truck. He removed the chains and opened the gate. I climbed into my truck, started it up, and drove it out of the impound lot. The sergeant followed me back to Chestnut Court. "I am going to have a conversation with Mrs. Whitmore," he said. "This has gone way beyond an HOA dispute. She has now interfered with emergency services, which is a crime." "I appreciate that, Sergeant. What is your schedule for completing work in this neighborhood?" "I have probably another 3 days of repairs. There are still about 20 homes without power in this community." "Complete your work. If anyone harasses you, call immediately." He drove off. I set up my equipment and went back to work. An hour later, Patricia Whitmore showed up. But this time she was not alone. She brought 5 other people with her, all wearing matching polo shirts with the HOA logo. "You were ordered to remove that truck," she screamed up at me. I was 30 feet in the air, working on a transformer. "Your order has no legal authority." "I have called the state attorney general's office. I have called the governor's office. I have reported you for trespassing, for vandalism, for disturbing the peace. Call whoever you want." "I am doing my job. That job ends today. I am issuing a formal trespass notice on behalf of the Oakmont Hills Homeowners Association. You are hereby banned from entering this community." One of her companions, a thin man in his 50s, held up a document. This is an official trespass notice signed by the HOA board. If you enter this community again, we will have you arrested." I lowered the bucket and climbed down. I took the document from him and read it. It was typed on official-looking letterhead with signatures from all 5 board members. "This is completely unenforceable," I said. "I am performing utility work under state authority. Your trespass notice does not apply to essential services." "We own these streets," Patricia said. "This is private property. We have every right to determine who enters." "Actually, you do not. Utility easements grant access for exactly this kind of work, and emergency services are exempt from trespass laws. Did you consult an attorney before doing this?" Her face went red. "I have been an HOA president for 8 years. I know the law. Clearly you do not." She pulled out her phone. "I am calling the police right now to have you arrested for trespassing." "Go ahead." She dialed and put the phone on speaker. When the dispatcher answered, Patricia launched into a tirade about how I was trespassing, how I had been ordered to leave, how I was refusing to comply with lawful orders. The dispatcher, to her credit, remained calm. "Madam, is this the electrical contractor performing storm repairs?" "Yes, but he is authorized to be there. Emergency utility work is exempt from HOA restrictions and trespass laws." "That is not, madam. If you continue to interfere with emergency utility work, you could be charged with obstruction. I suggest you step back and allow him to complete his job." Patricia hung up without responding. Her face was purple now, veins visible on her neck. "This is not over," she hissed at me. "Not by a long shot." She and her entourage left. I went back to work, but I had a sinking feeling this was going to get worse before it got better. That night, I returned to the staging area where we parked our trucks between shifts. My bucket truck had a massive scratch down the side, the words "Get Out" spray painted in red across the boom. I called the police and filed a vandalism report. They took photos, asked questions, but we all knew who was responsible. The next morning, I arrived at Chestnut Court to continue repairs. My bucket truck was running rough, sputtering. I popped the hood and found sugar in my gas tank. Someone had sabotaged my truck. I called Maria. "I need a backup truck. Mine has been sabotaged." "What? Sugar in the gas tank? It is ruined." "This is insane. I am calling the lawyers." "This has to stop." While I waited for a replacement truck, the police came out again. This time they interviewed neighbors, checked for security camera footage, documented everything. One neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Chen, pulled me aside. "I saw Patricia and 2 other board members walking around the truck last night around 11 p.m. I thought it was strange but did not think much of it until now." "Would you be willing to tell the police that?" "Absolutely. This HOA has gotten out of control. They fine people for every little thing, they make up rules as they go, and they treat this neighborhood like their personal kingdom." She gave a statement to the police. With her testimony and the documented vandalism, the police said they had enough to bring charges. The replacement truck arrived by noon and I continued working. Every few hours, Patricia or one of her board members would show up to yell at me, take photos, make threats. I ignored them and focused on my work. By the end of that day, I had restored power to another 15 homes. The residents were grateful, thanking me profusely, bringing me water and snacks. Several of them apologized for the HOA's behavior. "They are insane," one man told me. "Last month they tried to fine me $500 because my mailbox was the wrong shade of black." The wrong shade. It was black. They have a specific approved shade, and mine was apparently too dark. Why do people put up with it? Most of us did not realize what we were getting into when we bought here. The HOA seemed reasonable at first, but Patricia took over about 3 years ago, and it has been a nightmare ever since. She has driven 4 families to sell their homes just to escape the constant harassment. Over the next 2 days, I continued working in Oakmont Hills, restoring the remaining downed lines. Each day brought new harassment from Patricia and her board. They called the police. They called code enforcement. They called the power company to complain. They even contacted my insurance company claiming I was performing unsafe work. Every single complaint was investigated and found to be baseless. On the final day of work in the community, I was repairing the last downed line on Birch Street. It was almost evening, the sun setting, and I was exhausted but satisfied. Every home in Oakmont Hills now had power restored. Despite all the harassment and sabotage, I had completed my job. As I was lowering the bucket for the last time, Patricia showed up with what looked like a photographer. "Document everything," she told him. "His truck is parked illegally. He is damaging our landscaping. This constitutes trespassing and vandalism." The photographer started taking pictures of my truck from every angle. "Are you serious?" I said. "I just spent 5 days restoring power to your entire community, despite constant harassment, and you are documenting code violations. You have violated our covenants repeatedly. The HOA will be pursuing legal action against you and the power company for damages, emotional distress, and legal fees. Good luck with that. You have no idea who you are dealing with. I have attorneys on retainer. I will sue you into bankruptcy. I have insurance and a legal team too. Plus, I have documentation of every threat you have made, every act of harassment, and a police report for the sabotage of my truck. Bring it on." I packed up my equipment, loaded my truck, and left Oakmont Hills. I was happy to be done with that nightmare community. 2 weeks later, I received a registered letter. It was from the Oakmont Hills HOA legal team, a fancy law firm out of Hartford. The letter demanded payment of $37,000 for various violations, damages, and fees. I forwarded it to my insurance company and my attorney. My attorney, Dave Richardson, called me that afternoon. "This is one of the most frivolous legal demands I have ever seen. They are claiming you damaged landscaping, violated community aesthetics, caused emotional distress to residents, and trespassed repeatedly." I was doing legally authorized utility work. "I know. We are not paying a penny of this. In fact, I think we should countersue for harassment, for the sabotage of your equipment, and for interference with emergency services. What are the chances we win?" "About 100%. They have no case, but it will take time and money to fight. Do it. I am tired of HOAs thinking they can push people around." Dave filed our response, denying all claims and filing a countersuit for $80,000 in damages, lost wages, equipment repairs, and legal fees. The HOA's attorneys tried to schedule mediation. We declined. They tried to negotiate a settlement. We declined. Dave made it clear we were taking this to court and we were going to win. 3 months later, we had our day in court. It was a civil hearing in Hartford Superior Court. Patricia showed up with her entire HOA board, all of them in matching blazers, looking smug and confident. I sat with Dave at the plaintiff's table. We had binders full of documentation. Photos, police reports, witness statements, state statutes, utility authorizations, everything. The HOA's attorney, a slick guy in an expensive suit, argued that I had repeatedly violated clearly stated community covenants, that I had been warned multiple times, and that my refusal to comply had caused significant distress to the community. When it was our turn, Dave methodically destroyed every argument. He presented the state statutes governing emergency utility work. He showed the utility easements that granted access to all properties for repairs. He presented the police reports documenting the harassment and sabotage. He had witness testimony from Mrs. Chen and 3 other neighbors describing the HOA's behavior. Then he presented something I had not known about. Dave had requested records from the town showing that Patricia's HOA had been sued 14 times in the past 3 years by residents. They had lost 12 of those cases. The other 2 were still pending. This is a pattern of abuse, Dave told the judge. The Oakmont Hills HOA, under Patricia Whitmore's leadership, has consistently exceeded its authority, harassed residents and service workers, and attempted to enforce rules that have no legal basis. My client was performing essential emergency services legally authorized by the state and was subjected to threats, sabotage, and theft of property. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, listened to everything. She asked questions. She reviewed the documents. Then she made her ruling. I find in favor of the plaintiff, Trevor Nordstrom. The HOA's demands are completely without merit. Not only did Mr. Nordstrom have legal authority to perform his work, but the HOA's actions constituted harassment, interference with emergency services, and vandalism. Patricia's face went white. Furthermore, the judge continued, I am awarding Mr. Nordstrom the full amount of his countersuit, $80,000 to be paid by the Oakmont Hills Homeowners Association. Additionally, I am ordering the HOA to reimburse Mr. Nordstrom for all legal fees associated with this case. Patricia stood up. Your Honor, that is, sit down, Mrs. Whitmore. I am not finished. Patricia sat. I am also referring this matter to the State Attorney General's office for investigation into potential criminal charges related to the theft of Mr. Nordstrom's vehicle and the sabotage of his equipment. Interfering with emergency services is a serious crime. The hearing ended. Patricia and her board filed out, none of them looking at me. Dave shook my hand. That went better than expected. What happens now? They have 30 days to pay the judgment. If they do not, we can put a lien on the HOA's assets and force collection. As for the criminal investigation, that is up to the Attorney General's office. 2 weeks later, I received a check for $80,000 from the Oakmont Hills HOA. It nearly bankrupted them. According to news reports I saw later, they had to levy a special assessment on all homeowners to cover the judgment, which caused an uproar in the community. A month after that, I got a call from a detective with the Connecticut State Police. Mr. Nordstrom, this is Detective Williams with the Major Crimes Unit. I am calling about the Oakmont Hills HOA case. Yes, we have completed our investigation into the theft and vandalism of your bucket truck. Based on witness testimony and security camera footage from neighboring properties, we have determined that Patricia Whitmore and 2 other HOA board members, Richard Kemper and Susan Martinez, were directly involved in the sabotage of your vehicle. So, what happens now? We are filing criminal charges, interference with emergency services, vandalism, and criminal mischief. These are serious charges that carry potential jail time. I just wanted to do my job. I understand. But what they did was criminal, and we take interference with essential services very seriously, especially during emergency situations. People needed power. You were restoring that power. They sabotaged your equipment. That put public safety at risk. 3 months later, Patricia Whitmore, Richard Kemper, and Susan Martinez went on trial for criminal charges. I had to testify, describing everything that had happened. Mrs. Chen testified. The police officers testified. The tow truck drivers testified. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury found all 3 of them guilty on all counts, Patricia was sentenced to 6 months in jail and 2 years probation. Richard and Susan each got 3 months and probation. All three were ordered to resign from the HOA board and were permanently banned from serving in any HOA leadership position. The Oakmont Hills HOA underwent a complete reorganization. New board members were elected, all of whom campaigned on a platform of reasonable rules and community cooperation. They issued a public apology to me and invited me to a community meeting where residents thanked me for standing up to the old board's tyranny. As for me, I continued doing what I do. Storm season came around again the next year, and I was out there with my bucket truck, restoring power to homes and businesses across Connecticut. I got contracts with 3 additional utility companies, and my business grew substantially. I never went back to Oakmont Hills, though. New crew members handled any repairs needed in that community. I had dealt with enough drama there to last a lifetime, but the case became something of a legend in the utility contractor community. I started getting calls from other contractors who had dealt with HOA harassment, asking for advice on how to handle it. I always told them the same thing: document everything, know your legal rights, and do not back down when you are in the right. About a year after everything settled, I got a letter in the mail. It was from the new Oakmont Hills HOA board president, a woman named Jennifer Morris. "Dear Mr. Nordstrom," it read, "on behalf of the Oakmont Hills community, I want to thank you again for your professionalism and dedication during last year's storm repairs. Your willingness to stand up against unreasonable treatment has led to meaningful reform in our community. Our new board is focused on reasonable governance and community support, not petty rule enforcement. If you are ever in the area, please stop by. Many residents would love to thank you in person. Sincerely, Jennifer Morris, HOA President." It was a nice gesture. Maybe one day I would take her up on it. I kept the letter in my office, pinned to the wall next to my contractor licenses and certifications. It served as a reminder that sometimes standing up to bullies, even ones with perceived authority, is worth the fight. The incident also led to some changes at the state level. A state representative from Westfield introduced legislation clarifying that HOA covenants cannot interfere with emergency services or utility work. The bill passed unanimously and was signed into law. It was nicknamed Trevor's Law by some of the contractors who had followed the case. I never expected to become some kind of folk hero among utility workers, but that is what happened. I got recognized at industry conferences. People wanted to buy me drinks and hear the full story. It was surreal. But at the end of the day, I was just a guy trying to do his job. I fixed power lines. I restored electricity to homes and businesses. That was what mattered to me. The bucket truck that had been sabotaged was eventually repaired and put back into service. It still had a faint outline where the spray paint had been, a ghost of the words "Get Out" that could not quite be completely removed. I kept it that way intentionally. It was a reminder of what I had been through and why standing up for what is right matters. My business continued to thrive. I hired 3 more crew members and bought 2 additional bucket trucks. We handled storm repairs across Connecticut and into parts of Massachusetts and Rhode Island. The power companies loved working with us because we were reliable, professional, and we did not back down when things got difficult. I also started offering free talks at community centers about HOA rights and limitations. I wanted homeowners to understand what HOAs could and could not do, so they would not be bullied the way I had been. The talks were surprisingly popular. Turns out a lot of people have horror stories about overreaching HOAs. One evening, about 18 months after the whole Oakmont Hills situation, I was giving one of these talks at a community center in Stamford. About 50 people showed up, filling the small meeting room. I told my story, explaining the laws around utility easements, emergency services, and HOA authority. Then I opened it up for questions. A man in his 40s raised his hand. My HOA is trying to fine me $2,000 because I installed solar panels on my roof without their approval. Can they do that? Did you check your covenants before installation? Yes. There is nothing in there about solar panels, but the board says anything that changes the exterior appearance of a home requires approval. Connecticut has a solar rights law that limits HOA restrictions on solar installations. If your panels are reasonably placed and your covenants do not specifically prohibit them, the HOA probably cannot enforce that fine. I would consult an attorney who specializes in HOA law. A woman in the back raised her hand. My HOA tried to foreclose on my house because I was 3 months behind on dues. I was behind because I was in the hospital recovering from surgery. Is that legal? Unfortunately, yes. HOAs have broad authority to place liens and even foreclose for unpaid dues. However, there are procedures they have to follow, and if you can show you had a legitimate hardship, you might be able to negotiate. Again, talk to an attorney. Question after question, story after story. People were frustrated, angry, feeling powerless against their HOAs. I did what I could to provide information and guidance, but it was clear that HOA abuse was a widespread problem. After the talk, several people came up to thank me personally. One older couple told me their HOA had fined them $5,000 for having the wrong color flowers in their front garden. Wrong color flowers. They were fighting it in court. It was insane. Driving home that night, I thought about how much power these HOA boards had over people's lives. They could fine you, put liens on your home, even foreclose, and many people did not know their rights or how to fight back. That was when I decided to do something more. I started a website called HOA Rights Info. It was simple, just information about HOA laws in different states, resources for homeowners dealing with overreach, and a forum where people could share their stories and get advice. I did not charge anything for it. I just wanted to help people. The website blew up. Within 6 months, I was getting thousands of visitors a day. People shared their HOA horror stories, asked questions, and supported each other. I brought in a few attorney friends to volunteer their time answering legal questions. News outlets started picking up on it. I did interviews with local TV stations, then regional news programs, then a national cable news show. The host introduced me as the man who stood up to an HOA and won. It was never about fame for me. I just wanted to help people understand that HOAs are not all powerful, that there are limits to their authority, and that standing up to abuse is possible. But the attention brought more opportunities. I was invited to speak at state legislative hearings about HOA reform. I testified before the Connecticut General Assembly about the need for stronger protections for homeowners and clearer limitations on HOA authority. Some of my suggestions were incorporated into new legislation. Connecticut passed a law requiring HOAs to provide clear written notice and an opportunity to contest fines before they could be enforced. They also limited the amount HOAs could charge in late fees and required mediation before foreclosure actions. It was not perfect, but it was progress. Meanwhile, back in Oakmont Hills, the community was thriving under new leadership. The reformed HOA board focused on actual community improvement rather than petty enforcement. They organized neighborhood events, maintained common areas, and addressed real issues like road repairs and drainage problems. Property values in Oakmont Hills actually increased after the leadership change. Turns out people are willing to pay more for homes in communities with reasonable HOA management. Patricia Whitmore, after serving her jail time, moved out of Connecticut entirely. I heard through the grapevine she relocated to Florida. I felt a bit sorry for whatever community she ended up in, but that was no longer my problem. Richard Kemper and Susan Martinez stayed in the area but kept low profiles. They had both lost their jobs during the criminal trial. The negative publicity was too much for their employers. They eventually found new work, but never regained the standing they once had in the community. As for the impound lot that had taken my truck, they faced a civil lawsuit from the power company and ended up settling for an undisclosed amount. The owner told reporters he had learned a valuable lesson about verifying authority before impounding vehicles. I hoped he had. My business continued to grow. We landed a major contract with a regional utility company to handle all their storm response work across Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. I had to hire 10 more people and buy a fleet of new trucks. I never forgot where I came from, though. I still took calls from individual homeowners who needed electrical work. I still showed up personally for the big storm repairs. And I always stood up to anyone who tried to abuse their authority. One particularly satisfying moment came 2 years after the Oakmont Hills incident. I was working on storm repairs in a wealthy community in Greenwich, Connecticut. A different HOA president approached me, a man in his 50s wearing an expensive suit. "Excuse me, are you Trevor Nordstrom?" I braced myself for another confrontation. "Yes, that is me. I just wanted to shake your hand." He extended his hand and I shook it, confused. "I am the HOA president here. I heard about what you went through in Oakmont Hills. I want you to know that you have our full support. If you need anything while working in our community, parking access, security escorts, anything at all, just let me know." "Thank you. I appreciate that. We have clear policies about emergency services. You are always welcome here, and we will make sure our residents know to stay out of your way and let you work." That is refreshing to hear. What happened to you was disgraceful. HOAs are supposed to maintain property values and community standards, not interfere with essential services. You did the right thing by fighting back. That conversation stuck with me. Not all HOAs were bad. Not all HOA leaders were power-hungry tyrants. Many were reasonable people trying to maintain nice communities. The problem was that the system gave too much power to the bad ones, and homeowners often had little recourse. That was why the advocacy work mattered. That was why sharing information and supporting homeowners facing abuse was so important. My website continued to grow. I brought on volunteer moderators to help manage the forums. Attorneys from across the country volunteered to provide legal guidance specific to their states. We created downloadable guides on HOA rights for all 50 states. I also started a podcast, interviewing people who had dealt with HOA abuse and fought back. Their stories were incredible. A veteran who was fined for flying the American flag. A family fined for having a vegetable garden in their backyard. A disabled woman who was told her wheelchair ramp violated community aesthetics. Each story was infuriating, but each person had fought back and won. Those victories mattered. They showed that standing up to abuse was possible and necessary. 3 years after the Oakmont Hills incident, I received an award from the Connecticut Electrical Contractors Association for outstanding service and advocacy. The ceremony was held in Hartford, and dozens of fellow contractors showed up to support me. In my acceptance speech, I talked about that day when Patricia Whitmore first told me to move my truck. I talked about how ridiculous it seemed that someone would interfere with emergency power restoration over HOA covenants, and I talked about why I had fought back. I did not do this for recognition, I said. I did it because it was right, because people needed power and I had a job to do, because no one, not even an HOA, has the right to interfere with essential services. And because we all need to stand up to bullies, no matter what authority they claim to have. The applause was genuine and heartfelt. These were my people, fellow contractors who understood the challenges of the job and the importance of standing your ground. After the ceremony, a young contractor approached me. He could not have been more than 25, eager and nervous. "Mr. Nordstrom, I just wanted to thank you. I am dealing with an HOA issue right now, and your story gave me the courage to fight back. What is happening?" I live in a community with strict parking rules. They are trying to say I cannot park my work van in my driveway overnight, but I need my van for my business. I am an electrician like you. Do your covenants specifically prohibit work vehicles? They say no commercial vehicles, but there are dozens of people in the community who have company cars from their employers. The HOA is only enforcing this against contractors like me. That is selective enforcement, and it is probably not legal. Document everything. Get statements from neighbors about the company cars, and stand your ground. You have a right to park your work vehicle at your home. Thank you. I am going to fight this. Good. Let me know if you need any help or resources. Moments like that made everything worthwhile. Knowing that my experience had empowered others to stand up for their rights was incredibly satisfying. The years passed. My business grew into one of the largest electrical contracting companies in Connecticut. We handled everything from residential repairs to major commercial projects. But storm response remained my favorite work. There was something deeply satisfying about restoring power to communities, about being part of the solution when disaster struck. And I never had another major incident with an HOA. Word had spread in contractor circles and HOA circles alike. Trevor Nordstrom was not someone to mess with. He knew his rights, he documented everything, and he would fight back if pushed. That reputation served me well. Most HOAs left my crews alone when we worked in their communities. The few that tried to hassle us quickly backed down when we cited the relevant laws and mentioned my willingness to take legal action. 5 years after the Oakmont Hills incident, I was invited back to the community for a special ceremony. The new HOA board wanted to present me with a Community Service Award and officially apologize on behalf of Oakmont Hills. I almost declined. The memories of that week were still unpleasant, but Jennifer Morris, the board president, called me personally. "Please come," she said. "This is important to our community. What happened to you was wrong, and we want to make it right." So I went. The ceremony was held in the community clubhouse on a Saturday afternoon. About 100 residents showed up. Jennifer presented me with a plaque thanking me for my service and my patience during that difficult time. "Trevor Nordstrom represents everything good about service contractors," she said. "Despite facing harassment, theft, and vandalism, he continued to do his job and restore power to our homes. His professionalism and his willingness to stand up against injustice led to meaningful reform in our community. We are better because of him." It was a nice moment. Several residents came up to me afterward to thank me personally and apologize for what I had gone through. Mrs. Chen, the neighbor who had witnessed the sabotage, gave me a hug. "You are a good man, Trevor. Thank you for not giving up on us. You helped me by testifying. Thank you for that." It was the right thing to do. Driving home from Oakmont Hills that day, I felt a sense of closure. The nightmare that had started 5 years ago was truly over. Justice had been served, reforms had been made, and the community had moved forward. My story had become something bigger than just one contractor dealing with an unreasonable HOA. It had become a symbol of standing up to abuse, of knowing your rights, and of refusing to back down when you are in the right. That legacy was something I was proud of. Today, my company employs over 50 people. We have a fleet of trucks, a modern facility, and contracts with utility companies across 3 states. The website I started has over 1 million users and has helped thousands of homeowners fight back against HOA overreach. And I still have that bucket truck, the one that was stolen and sabotaged, the one with the faint ghost of spray paint that never quite came off. It is a reminder of where I have been and why the work matters. Because at the end of the day, this was never just about me or my business. It was about standing up for what is right, even when it is difficult. It was about refusing to let bullies win, no matter what authority they claim. It was about doing your job with integrity and professionalism, no matter what obstacles are thrown in your way. Those principles guided me through the Oakmont Hills incident, and they continue to guide me today. They are the foundation of my business and my advocacy work. And if I had to do it all over again, facing down Patricia Whitmore and her HOA board, dealing with the harassment and the sabotage and the legal battles, I would do it exactly the same way. Because some fights are worth fighting, some principles are worth defending, and some people, no matter how much authority they think they have, need to be stood up to. That is my story. That is why I do what I do. And that is why I will never stop fighting for contractors' rights and homeowners' rights against HOA abuse. The bucket truck that started it all is still in service, still climbing to heights to restore power when storms knock it out. That faint spray paint mark is still there, barely visible but always present. It is my badge of honor, my reminder that standing up to injustice matters, and my promise to never back down when I am in the right. Every time I climb into that truck, I remember what I fought for and why it mattered, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat.